Welcome to Healthy University, where we'll discuss issues and subjects on how you can live a healthier and more productive life. And now, here's your host for Healthy University, Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, this is Alan Eisenberg, and welcome to another episode of Healthy You. I'm really excited today because we're playing a little reversal game. I got to be on her podcast and her show, and it was so interesting that I wanted to have her as a guest on this show and talk about this amazing concept that she has. So my guest today is Sharón Wyeth. She's the creator of Neimology Science, the study of placement of letters in a name and how letter combinations correlate to specific behaviors. She created Neimology Science after 15 years of research, followed by 3 years of field testing her theories in over 70 countries, including Russia, India, and China. Sharon has continued to fine-tune this method during the last 19 years, which is why Neimology Science is so accurate today and used in so many countries. She's currently working on her Ph.D., correlating names to psychological patterns. So welcome to the show, Sharon.
Thank you, Alan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great to talk to you again. So kind of give us, I guess, a little bit more background about Neimology Science, how you came up with it, why it became a passion of yours, and how the system developed.
Okay. It started when I was going to be doing the seating chart for my students in the beginning of my 7th year of teaching. And normally, once we know the kids, we really put a lot of time and effort into seating charts because that means the whole class gets along or doesn't get along. So it's the beginning of the year. They give you 150 kids' names, into 5 classes, and you have no idea who they are. So you randomly make a seating chart. Well, the 7th year of teaching, as I was putting down the names, I was saying, oh, don't put Julie next to Joshua because together they're going to be clowns, but separated they're going to be okay, and Derek's going to need extra help, and Stephanie's going to be stubborn, and, put her to the side, put Derek up close, and I started acting as if I already knew all these kids. And it didn't even dawn on me until I was doing the beginning of the 4th class, and all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, I don't know anything about these kids, and I'm acting as if I do. So my brain is thoroughly trained in patterns because I'm a math major, and then I have a master's degree. And so my brain had picked up some kind of patterning. Mm-hmm. And so I decided to write down what I felt about every single child when all I had was their name. Mm-hmm. And I put it aside for 3 months until winter break. And when I looked at it, it was so incredibly accurate after I got to know the kids for who they were. So I said, okay, how do I make this pattern that my brain has recognized, how do I make it conscious? Mm-hmm. So I started with this huge spreadsheet because there was a plethora of Davids in my life. And so I put all the Davids down, across the top. And on the side, I started writing down all the qualities and characteristics I had seen from every David. The ones that were the same, going all the way through the chart, I said, okay, that must land in the name David. And then the other things must land in the other names. So eventually I could break it down not only by name, but by letter, and then by letter position. Mm-hmm. Because I'd say, how come it acts this way here and not here? And so I realized that the position of where it was in the name, it had different meanings. So it took me 15 years to figure out all the nuances. and I knew so many people. It was amazing to me. And so I just, from observation skills, was kept writing, what did I see, where are the patterns? And then I started testing it with people, and especially when I was working on the diphthongs and the consonant clusters, it was like, do you know anybody that has this combination in their name? Tell me about them. And then I'd be going, no, that's this letter, no, that's that letter, no, maybe it's this, Yeah. And yeah. I felt for everybody around me for about 4 or 5 years because I was constantly asking everybody questions and tell me about this one and tell me about that one, trying to figure out the patterns. So when I thought I had it, then I went back and visited 72 countries, and I talked about it in those countries, and I got input, and I fine-tuned, and I saw where the little nuances might be a little different, mm-hmm. depending on the country. Like in America, when 2 vowels go walking, or in English, the first one does the talking, but in Germany, when 2 vowels go walking, the second one does the talking. So if you have 2 vowels together, you have to reverse them to read a German name accurately. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's just a few little things like that. But other than that, it absolutely held.
Well, so how do you fight the people that doubt, I guess, or are more skeptical about it? Like, I just picked a random name. Like there is something. I mean, I believe it, that there's something pushing us to name our children or name people or where our names come from the origin. So how do you deal with the people that kind of go, well, I just it's more random to me?
Okay, well, there's two philosophies on that. One is a religious one, and when there were still only 7 religions on the planet, before I jokingly say they multiplied and divided and everybody made up their own, okay, they all agreed on some core concepts. And one of the concepts was that the incoming soul impresses upon the one that's going to name them what they want to be called, so we name ourselves. At one time, every religion understood that, or at least they believed it. So that means we name ourselves, so of course we're our names. Okay, now the other side is cymatics, Cymatics, and that's a science that literally shows how sound affects manifestation and literally can change the molecular structure of things. So what do we identify with most but our name? Because when somebody says, who are you? We answer with our name as if it should say it all. Now it does if you know Neimology Science. But when we answer it, we're literally saying, this is me, this vibration, this sound, this patterning is me. And cymatics says that literally changes our DNA structure. So we're literally becoming the vibration of our name.
Wow.
So all I've done is match the vibration that goes with every letter in the position and matched it to the behavior that's associated with that vibration. So in essence, that's what I've done.
So what's interesting is, you brought up cultures and different groups, and I know that I think every culture sort of has a philosophy of the way they name, right? And I know you've done a little bit of study on Native Americans and rituals. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, in Native Americans, a lot of times the shaman or the head person would do the naming. In Turkey, it's the oldest male relative that does the naming of the child. In Russia, the middle name of the person is always the father's name, and then there's an ending that goes on the father's name depending on whether the child is a boy or a girl. So around different cultures have different ones that will name them, but if the soul's impressing upon the one that's going to name them, they know who that is. They know where they have to give that name.
Mm-hmm. So let's get into the depth of it. Like, really explain how our name says something about us. One of the things when I was on your show before, it was just fascinating how you took my name, and I was like, wow, that's, it's almost, I hate
people always think I'm psychic.
Right, it's like psychic, right? But you're actually doing a process. So
yes, and it's teachable, so anybody can do it.
Yeah, can you walk me through that? Like, how does that work?
The first name is the essence of who a person is. The middle name is where they go when they're under stress, and the last name represents their environment. So that's why every David's not like every other David, because you put them in different environments, and that force acts on them. It's kind of like saying that the first name is like the ingredients in the kitchen that you have to work with, and the last name's the recipe that you're going to make with those ingredients. Okay? And then some people that have a middle name, they morph when they're under stress, and they go and all of a sudden they have these other attributes when they're under stress. Now, if the middle name is stronger than the first name, then a person's a procrastinator because they're always trying to get their strength to come out. And so they have to procrastinate to put themselves under stress. So then they'll get their better attributes coming out.
Right.
Okay. So I always say, if that's the case, give yourself a fake deadline, pretend like it's real, put yourself under stress earlier, and that way there's not a health consequence to it when you're doing it. The first letter of the first name is the first impression that we're giving people. The last letter in the first name is the lasting impression that we give somebody, and the first thing that people talk about is behind our backs. Now, you and I, Alan, both have N as our last letter in our first name.
Yeah.
And what that says is that we can drive people crazy with the minutia, okay, and all of the details, and that our memories are really good.
Yeah.
Okay. So
it's a very dangerous combination.
Very dangerous combination. Okay. So then the first vowel in the first name gives us what kind of gifts we like, our communication style, our learning style, you know, whether we learn auditorily or visually or kinesthetically. And anyway, there's so much in that first vowel. And then all the rest is what I call the middle letters. And then we have how letters act next to each other. So if you're in a classroom, and I just taught so many years that I always go back to that classroom. But if you're in a classroom and you're sitting next to somebody you like, you can be chitty and chatty and just, oh, you want to talk to them. If you're sitting next to somebody you don't care for, you're quiet. You kind of leave them alone. It's like, I don't want to have to interact with them any more than I have to.
Right.
And so it's the same thing with the letters. So let's do an example. Suppose a C is sitting next to an H, like in Michael or in Cheryl. It doesn't matter where the combos land, anywhere in the name. So you have a C next to an H. So I have a mnemonic device for everything that I say in my book so that it's easier for your brain to remember, because again, I was a teacher all those years. Mm-hmm. So the C's are charming and charismatic to cover their need to be in charge and in control. Okay? So they're the ones that always want it their way, and they always want to be the one telling everybody else what to do. Okay? So they always want to be in charge. Now, they can do it in such a charming fashion that the rest of us don't mind. But anyway, they need to be in charge. Then let's look at the H. The H is what I call the holy letter because it has very few challenges and just a ton of gifts that come with it. Mm-hmm. And those are the people that just have a lucky streak. I mean, they always land on their feet. They can make something really horrible and they come out smelling like a rose. You know, somehow it just works. And they just kind of know how to go with the flow. I always look at it as it's a river and they're going down the river, and wherever they go, they end up, okay, that's great. That's where I wanted to go. So that's totally a lack of control. You're just flowing with the river. So now you put the C that has control next to this H, which is a lack of control, right, to go with the flow. And it causes people to do things the hard way because they don't know whether they're supposed to be in charge or they're supposed to let go. And so they got this inner dialect going back and forth all the time. When am I supposed to be in charge? When am I supposed to let go? How much of what? And so they end up doing things the hard way.
Yeah. That's, I mean, so where are there any outliers? Do you find, like, as you were doing your research, was there any, like, oddball things? Because I always think about, you know, for me, it's like, I don't know if I told you this, like, I had a guy once call me and he wanted to have an Alan Eisenberg get-together. And I thought, what are 50 Alan Eisenbergs going to do with each other? You know, what's your name? But then it would be the middle name, right? The differences would have been interesting in the middle name because this guy is Alan D. Eisenberg and I'm Alan L. Eisenberg, and obviously I'm not sure what his middle name is, but he gets himself in a lot of trouble. I keep an eye on him. But
it also, like when I'm doing a reading, I also look at the parent birth names.
Yeah.
Because that gives me so much more of the influence, and I can tell you this is what you learned from your mom, this is what you got from your dad. You know, so that's even more in depth than just the last name of the environmental influence, because that's the generic environmental influence, including everybody, the teachers, the neighbors, the friends. But once you get the parent names, you know exactly what the influence was on that child.
So I have an interesting thought for you, and I'd love to hear what you think. You know, I know some people, like, they get to a point where, you know, they were named something, but then they kind of change it to what they want it to be, right? So like, we had my son Andrew, but we knew we weren't going to call him Andrew. So we wanted to call him Drew. Well, he wanted to be Andy. And he is Andy. So how does that play in? Like, you know, that's somebody almost making their own choice about their name, right?
Well, it says where they're going to focus on their personality. Mm-hmm. So whatever's on that birth certificate, that is literally your contract with life. And in your contract with life, it literally says, I came here to share these gifts with others that I came in with, and I came to learn these other things from my environment and the people around and books and however else I had to do it. But I had to learn this stuff, and it shows up in the name. Now, let's say I change what I'm going by. Mm-hmm. Then it's saying, this is my personality, and this is what I'm focused on, but it doesn't mean I get to relieve myself and not do the rest of those letters in my name. Okay? It just simply says, how am I going to do what I came to do?
Yeah, I kind of like that. So it really is a person kind of making a decision that makes them as they are, right? And it brings personality out by their choice of how they want to be known.
Sure. It's kind of like saying, I need to get from LA to New York. Am I going to walk? Am I going to drive? Am I going to take the bus? Am I going to take a train? Am I going to take a couple of planes? Am I going to go direct? Am I going to go at night? Am I going to go during the day? It all shows up in that name as the person makes choices. And as we're changing what I call the nicknames, any variation from the birth name to me is a nickname. That's literally saying, and if I choose it for myself, it's saying, this is where my focus is, this is my style. Now, if somebody else chooses the nickname for me, then they're saying, these are the only parts of you that I really want to see, and the rest of it, if you don't show me, that'd be nice.
Interesting. Yeah, I won't tell you what when I was little, my nickname was, because I don't like it. But I wonder how much of that would play into it. Well, we have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like for you to talk a little more about the science and maybe do an analysis on me, so that people can hear, how it all comes together.
Okay, so, be glad to.
Do that? Great.
Yep.
Okay, so if you'll hold on, we'll be right back with more Healthy You.
You're listening to Healthy University with Alan Eisenberg.
Hi, this is Alan Eisenberg. Welcome back to our second segment of Healthy You. I'm here with Sharón Wyeth. We're talking about Neimology, which is the study of names. And Sharon, it's fascinating. Are you the only one right now who is working in this field and bringing this field to light?
Except for the people I've taught. I've taught quite a few people, and what it takes really to get all the nuances is about 3 years of practice. And I have 2 levels of classes, the beginning, and by the time you've got all the basics, and you can go out and do anybody's name, you could talk to them for a good half hour on their name. And then the second level is all the nuances, the subtleties, the putting things together, the comparing 2 names and getting really good at it. And then you can talk over an hour on anybody because there's so much in a name. And what I've noticed is I started teaching this about 5 years ago. And the ones that have now done it for about 3 years, I think they're just every bit as good as I am at it, and everybody else has varying degrees. And I think it's a comfort zone and it's a memory thing.
Well, and I think as you, I guess, become more adept at it, you start to see the nuances in it. Because I'm sure it's not even and clear, like everybody has their unique piece, and so you go out probably starting in a larger world, and then it becomes smaller, and I would imagine. So we were talking about it, and I said I'd be willing to let you analyze me. I'll let you do that on the other show, but I don't think you had my middle name. And you made a really neat comment at the beginning about middle names. So I'm curious now, when you now know my name is Alan Laurence Eisenberg and how it's spelled, what does that come across as?
Okay, now I'm going to give you a brief version of it because, like I said, I could talk longer than your show on your name. Okay, so one of the things is when you came into this world already with the skill of being able to see something from somebody else's point of view. You already came in with a very generous heart. You want to be able to help people. You want to give, and sometimes you give too much so that you don't get all of your own stuff done. Okay, like you're overly generous to a fault at times. But you also came in with wanting to be in charge of you. You didn't want anybody else in charge of you. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's like, no, I got to be in charge of me. I don't need to be in charge of somebody else, but by golly, I don't want anybody else in charge of me either. Okay, and whether you look at the middle name as where you got it from, whether it was the immediate past life or wherever we are when we're not in body, these are the things that you're coming in with. And one of the things was that you hadn't mastered yet was self-confidence. So in this lifetime, you said, man, I'm going to get that one. I'm going to do whatever it takes, and I'm going to become self-confident. And I want to get it early in life. I don't want to wait till the end. Okay, so we already talked about your great memory with that ending in an N. Then your name says that you have a tendency to be a workaholic, and you'll work and work and work and work and work because you want to get that job done. Okay, but then once it's done, or once you're done for the day, you can be the couch potato. And it's like, I'm not getting up if I don't have to. Would you please go to the bathroom for me so I still don't have to get up? Only if you could, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of the things that's in the name. Also is a high level of observation skills. You observe a lot, you see a lot, you take in a lot, but you don't share half of what you see. You just kind of keep it to yourself, and so your observation skills are very high. Okay? It also says in your name that you're very sensitive to criticism. You want to shut down and quit when criticized, and you've had to learn how to self-talk and pump yourself up so that you don't shut down and quit when somebody criticizes you, because you have a high level of sensitivity. Now, one of the challenges, I don't always like to do the challenges of a name on air, but one of the challenges in your name is that of what I want to call illusion. So sometimes it's harder for you to figure out what's real and what's not real. That takes time for you. You can figure it out, it's in there, and you'll eventually get it. But and initially, that's really kind of like, I don't know, does that work? Does that not work? Is that real? Is that not real? It's what I call the illusion combo. I can buy into an illusion, and you can get like 90% of everything real and just buy into the illusion 10%. But you've got to be really careful, because if you're building a house, you don't want 10% of your foundation to be sand.
Right.
And so anybody who has that illusion combination in their name will then look at, I always tell people that are dating them, find out where it is. And if it's a minor thing, you go, who cares, right? But if it's a major thing, then you want to step back and go, whoa, wait a minute, let me look at this.
Well, my wife's stuck for 25 years, so I still think she's like, whoa, wait, I got to look at this. But, that's just a day-by-day basis. The interesting thing you hit on, which I've been talking about a lot, which is really interesting, is, I'm really big these days on being really careful not to label, like singularly label. Right? Because I've discovered so much about myself, and one of the biggest things recently is that I'm an extroverted introvert. So when you talk about like having sort of this high energy and getting the job done and then all that, and then I gotta just poop out on the couch. That's what an extroverted introvert does. People think, oh, you're so extroverted, you're always on ready to go do something. Oh no, definitely not. If I sit around on a weekend, it's perfectly fine with me. And then I'm ready to go. Yeah. Then I've re-energized. But my wife has a friend, and she is just has to be busy like until her eyes close. She's working, work.
And that shows up in the name.
Yeah.
It just, all of that, and the communication style, you come from a more mental perspective. You're going to look at it mentally first. And if your mind and your heart are disagreeing with each other, your name indicates you're going to go with what your head tells you, not with what your heart tells you. It's like, I could be misled there. I think I'm going to rationalize this out or reason it out, and I'm going to go with my head.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, it also says, like, who we have the most challenges with, okay? And what's really interesting is what your first name and your middle name, which is really more of you because the last name is your environment, literally says your environment's coming from one direction, and that's from heart and emotions, and let's look at it that way. And your head is saying, no, I like the scientific stuff, I like the for facts, I like the, that kind of stuff. And so it says that at times you may feel uncomfortable in your environment because they're coming at you from a different direction of where your comfort zone is.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is in a name, it always says whose responsibility is what. And it's your responsibility to learn how to adapt to those others, and it's not their responsibility to learn how to adapt to you, because your name says you'll be the responsible one.
That's interesting. Yeah. So when you started looking at your own name, How is that? I mean, I'm assuming you've done it like on, okay,
Well,
this is kind of interesting about myself.
Well, as I was figuring out different combos, like my name has a ton of observation letters in it. I'm looking at my birth name now because that's where it stems from. And it has a ton of observation letters in it, and it has logic and deductive reasoning all the way through my name. And it has really good memory skills all the way through where I can really drive people nuts with the minutia. And I look at Neimology, and I think it took observation skills, it took the logic and deductive reasoning, and it took all the minutia. So I can look at my name and go, there it is. It's right there. It's why this was able for me to do, because we all come in with something. Yeah. And the thing in my name is the two biggest things for me is it screams, don't micromanage me. Mm-hmm. If you give me a job to do, just let me do it. Don't try to, if you look too closely over my shoulder, I just want to slap you. I don't, but the whole feeling is, get out of my face, Okay, and it's because my name indicates that freedom is the most important thing to me. Now, I'm going to share this with everybody that's listening, because if you have somebody that has the SH combination in their name, I mean, it shows up in so many names like Sharon or Shelley or Joshua in the middle. I mean, it can show up anywhere. And when they have that SH, don't try to hold them in a cage. Don't try to close them in. They're like birds that need to fly, and you let them fly, and they'll always come home at night. But the minute you try to put them in a cage and close the door, then the minute they can fly, they're gone, and they won't come back.
Interesting.
It's that SH combination is what I found. Those people need their freedom more than any other group, and that's vital to them.
And I would imagine that there are combos that don't you find that just over observation don't meld well together. Like, oh, you tried to put this combo with this combo, and they butt heads a lot.
There are challenges when you're comparing two names, and we teach that in the very first class, and that's in the book. And there's challenges, but what's really cool is that the solution to any challenge that can come up also sits in the name.
Right.
So there's always a way out, again, if you know how to read the name. Just like if it's your responsibility to learn the way of the emotional people, it's not theirs to learn yours.
Right.
Okay? So the solution is always in that name. So if you want to get along with somebody, you can, because all you have to do is read the name and know which challenge has which solution.
Right. And then when you're dealing with those people, like when you teach it and you deal with these people, there's techniques, right? There's techniques that develop to go, okay, this is how you work. It's almost like reading a book called How to Handle Difficult People, right? Like here's these two people, here's how you would handle that. And I always say, no two people are alike. If you're a manager, the first thing you find out is the way you're managing one person is not going to work for the other person.
Exactly. Well, and it shows up in the name. And I work with a lot of HR departments, and I will often get from a manager, okay, here's this person's name, here's the job description. How do I work with them better? They don't tell me what the problem is, because I don't need to know. I can look at the name. And then I can say, okay, based on your name, based on their name, this is what you need to know. And when they do this that drives you nuts, this is what you need to say to get them on board.
Exactly, yeah.
But I also work with lawyers that way, helping them to present cases in front of judges to say, you want to say certain words that your client knows that you're working for them. So even if you lose the case, you get paid. And you want to have certain words that are going to ping the judge, so the judge wants to go more with your side than the other. So let's say, for an example, that the judge has the combination in their name that says they have fairness issues, okay? And they need the world to be fair. Then if I'm a lawyer and I'm presenting a case, I'm going to constantly be looking at that judge and going, and this happened, and was that fair? And then think about this, and you think that was fair? And I'm going to keep pounding that fairness, because that pings them, because they have their own fairness issues, and then they really want to be fair, and so that makes them look more on your side than another.
Interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I help a lot of lawyers prepare for cases to know which sayings, which words are going to ping, And you want to ping your client at the same time because you want your client knowing that you're fighting for them. And there's certain words that let them know based on their name that, hey, you got their battle.
So I would expect that a little bit that Neimology gets compared to Numerology, and I've read some books and done a little studying about Numerology because it's very interesting, particularly in the Hebrew language. There's a whole, in the Old Testament, there's all this numerology that goes on in there that's talked about quite a bit. Of course, there's a whole section on it. But so how does it compare? How do you compare and contrast those two things?
Okay, well, in the Zohar, which is where numerology came from originally and that went into the Hebrew, okay, they do numerology very differently than Pythagorean, and that numerology is, I think, more popular and more easily to understand. But that uses numbers, and it uses 3 numbers that you get out of a name and 3 numbers that you get off of a birthday, okay, and then you're looking at those 6 things. Neimology doesn't use any numbers. I know I'm a math major, but I don't use any numbers. I use literally placement of the letter and what is the letter sitting next to. So it's totally a different system with one tiny little exception. When you want to know the timing of something, like we're always focused on something for so many years in our lives, and then our focus shifts and changes. And if you want to know how long your focus is and from what age to what age you're going to be focused on what.
Right.
And I've done this. I love doing it with older people because you can backtrack and I can say that this time you started focusing on education, or this time it was focusing on the job, or this time it was focusing on relationships, or this time period you were focusing on money, or it all shows up in the name according to, and that's the only time I use numbers, and you only have to know how to add.
So age plays a role in Neimology?
Age plays a role of what are we focused on when.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would imagine that to be true, yeah.
Because our focus shifts, as time goes on. We're not focused today on what we were focused on, a couple of years back, or let alone when we were in our parents' houses, what was focused on then is so different. And so you can literally, it takes like maybe 5 minutes to figure out. It's the easiest thing, only uses addition. And you can figure out what your focus is based on what year it is, how old you are.
See, yeah, and I think that's an interesting comparison too, is, as you were talking about my name, I was thinking about different stages in my life where, I was more aware of some of the things you were talking about. So it's such an interesting science. It's fascinating, and I'm sure that it's going to continue to grow as you do the work you do. So I like to ask my guests one last question, and then I'd love for you to tell people how to get in touch with you and learn more about Neimology. But this is a question because it is Healthy You, and I think we all try to find ways to live a healthier and happier life. So for you, what do you do in your life that helps you feel healthier and happier?
I really watch what I eat. And I know that may sound absolutely crazy, but I realize when I eat certain things like flour that my whole system wants to shut down. I want to go to sleep. So I am very careful. I don't eat salt, sugar. I don't eat oils. I don't eat meat, and I don't eat dairy. Yeah. And a lot of people go, what's left? But there's plenty left. There's all the vegetables, all the fruits. There's grains that have not been powdered into flour.
Right.
There's seeds. There's nuts. There's wonderful things. And then I only drink water.
Well, yeah, I definitely, you and I are on the same level. Definitely on water. Like, water is all I ever really need. And if I need anything else, it's maybe if I'm doing a big workout or doing a race or something, I need that Gatorade. But I always cut it with water. Everything's cut with water. I never take like the full whatever sugar and feel. But more interesting is that, you say it's a little crazy, but I talk about it all the time. Most of the serotonin in our body is developed in the gut. So it's based on what we eat and what is the mental health deficiency that causes, a lot of issues. It's serotonin. So actually, working out's great because you get endorphin, and that's like getting a rush. It's almost, I don't want to compare it to taking a drug, but it's, it's a very immediate response. But the serotonin is the long-term thing that you need for your brain. So really what we put in our gut is extremely important to that, and I talk about that quite a bit. That you know, whatever it is, and again, for some people, flour doesn't affect them, and for others it does. It's kind of like, you know, what we learn about, what you're talking about with Neimology. Everybody's built different, everybody's different, and you have to figure out, you know, your balance. But the idea of a balanced diet, right? The idea of balancing what you eat for you.
And the other thing I think is really important is getting enough sleep. I think our country as a whole is sleep deprived.
Yeah.
And so I think if you eat right and you get enough sleep, you have all the patience in the world. I know that all the different places I've taught, as we've moved around a lot, one thing that all the supervisors have ever written on my sheet, the thing that's always in common is, my goodness, you have patience with those kids. And I look at it and I think, I don't think of myself as a patient person because I want things fast or whatever. I mean, I want to catch on fast. I want to get things done quickly. But I look at it and I think, if I have enough sleep and I have good food in my stomach, so I feel full and I feel satisfied and I know I'm healthy, then it's easy to have patience because I'm not tired.
Right. Well, sleep, I mean, by and far, you know, the first thing that fails for people, I think, when they enter any kind of mental health issue is sleep. You know, which is led by stress. You know, stress is the gateway to everything, and it's really interesting. There's huge studies on the physiology and psychology aspects of stress, you know, because some people are stress eaters, some don't eat. Either way, it's not good, you know.
Right,
Yeah.
Either way.
One's going fast food route, the other one's not putting anything in their stomach. And again, like I said, the stomach's really the producer. And then, you know, when you're constantly ruminating or stressed, then you don't sleep.
Well, my research is done, but I haven't written the book yet. But the research is now done for what will eventually be Know the Name, Know the Health. Because again, it's in the letters in our name, what systems we can have and what can go wrong or what can go right, you know. And so when I was in 8th grade, my mother gifted me with a reading, because I had come home and said, Mom, I think I need to go to a psychologist. I think so differently than the people around me. And so she said, let me send you to Afra Wesh. And Afra was one of the 3 astrologers that Hitler did not kill and that he had working for him. And so anyway, so she sent me to Afra and just said, let's just get an overview for your life. And Afra told me at that time, she said, your weakest organ that you need to always watch for is your kidney. You know, and that you came in and that's your weakest of all. So if you take care of your kidney, you know, the rest of you should be good. And as I thought about that, I made decisions at that time. I was 13. And I said, okay, as a 13-year-old, I understand that if you drink, that's not good for the kidney, you know, and the kidney needs a lot of water to flush itself out and whatever. So I decided I wouldn't drink alcohol. And I made that decision at 13. And I can tell you today that there's only 7 occasions where I've had an alcoholic drink in my life.
Yeah.
I've chosen to have one drink. And so I look at that and I think that could have saved me and kept me healthy, where otherwise, maybe I would have said this stuff is great and you know, overdone it. And so I look at that and my hope is that when I'm through writing Know the Name, Know the Health, that you can look up the letters in your name and see what's the predominant thing that goes through the majority of your letters that you have to watch for.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So like, for an example, if you have an AN in your name, which you do, okay, at some time or another in your life, you've got to watch your immune system because your immune system can get weaker. And it sits in those letters, that AN.
Yeah,
So
I know. There's no doubt. No doubt. Yeah.
Okay, and if you have like an AR combination in your name, somewhere in your life you're either going to have strep throat or throat issues or a throat problem. Something's going to happen with the throat. It can be as simple as a strep throat, you know, and you don't get that necessarily all the time. But somewhere in the life we see a throat issue. So if you know what letters go with what symptoms, okay, like I said, the research is done. I just need to get it written.
The easy part, right? Just write it all down.
You know, then you can, you know, you can look for that, or the minute you catch it, you can go, oh yeah, and you'll be more aware to say, what do I need to do to always make sure my throat's okay? Or what do I need to do to always make sure I've got a strong immune system? How do I need to eat so that I'm always boosting my immune system? And same thing like when I said I'm not going to drink because I want to help my kidney.
Right. Well, and I don't think if you knew it, but my younger son is an AR, and he had huge amounts as a young child of bronchiolitis. Like, he was in the hospital, with throat issues and those kind of issues. So that's just interesting. I mean, it's just, again, I think there's so much we don't know. That's what I keep saying. I mean, the universe is constantly teaching us something. And sometimes we have to listen or hear or learn. So I'm so glad you came on the show and shared that. How can people reach you? Do you have a website?
It's very easy. It's Know the Name, because everything's in that name. So if you knowthename.com, and then you just go to contact on that website and contact me. And there's a whole page that says services, and we offer all kinds of things. So if you want to learn it, there's all kinds of ways to do that.
That's awesome, yeah, and I'll definitely have that link on the page for with the podcast. So, Sharón, thanks so much for being on the show. You've really developed something interesting, and all this kind of stuff fascinates me, because I do think the universe is constantly speaking to us, and I did a show on that the other day, and are we listening, or are we hearing like the things? Decisions aren't just made at random. And I think the same thing about names. I think that's a fascinating subject that you've been working on. So thanks for being on Healthy You.
Absolutely. My joy and pleasure. Thank you, Alan.
Well, Joy, I hope you'll join us next time for another episode of Healthy You.
Thank you for listening to Healthy University, brought to you by Bullying Recovery, LLC. This podcast does not replace the need for medical advice, professional diagnosis, opinion, treatment, or services to you or any other individual. The information provided here or through linkages to other sites is not a substitute for medical or professional care, and you should not use the information in place of a visit, call, consultation, or the advice of your physician or other healthcare provider. Join us next time for more Healthy University.